industry has the speed, it has the talent. We are unfortunately hemorrhaging a bit of talent from government right now. I think we'll regret that in the future. But if that talent is landing in industry, our nation will be better for it. So I think watching just some incredible advancements on all the fronts that I mentioned, those are happening in industry.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Future of GovCon. This is a weekly podcast that we put together to bring to experts from across the industry and look at what's happening today and how it's going to impact the future. I'm Jake Frazer. I'm the owner and CEO of Precision Talent Solutions. In leading one of the industry's top executive search firms, I get to talk to influencers every day. C-suite executives, board members, growth leaders, top government officials, military flag officers. And on this podcast, what we're doing is we're bringing in these experts from AI, from space, from medical, from logistics, from engineering. And we're sitting down and talking about what's happening in their specific area of the industry and how it will impact the future. So pour a cup of coffee and let's get started. Hey everybody, it's Jake and welcome back to another episode of the Future of GovCon. We've had an eclectic group of guests here recently, and today we're really excited to bring in a very recently retired senior leader from the Air Force who's been involved in intelligence and ISR for years. Today we have with us Brigadier General retired Melissa or Mel Stone. We'll call her Mel for the rest of the podcast. Mel, welcome to the podcast. Great to have you here.
Thanks, Jake. Great to be here. Appreciate you having me.
We always ask our guest any recommendations for somebody we should have on the podcast, and we had Ryan Heritage on, who was Marine type Cybercom J3, and he said without pausing, he said you got to have Mel Stone on. She's retiring and brings a lot of great perspective. So you come well recommended by Ryan.
Well, I appreciate that. He is my favorite Marine. I don't say that lightly. He's a great guy.
He had a great episode. We had some really good insights, which we may touch on a few of them. I want to get your perspective on the future of cyber, maybe even a separate service for cyber at some point. I want to get your perspectives on that. But so why do we have Mel on the podcast? Look, she just came out of the Pentagon at the highest strategic level, working the Air Force, where she was the Assistant Deputy Chief of Staff for ISR for the entire Air Force. And I think everybody that knows anything about ISR or knows anything about the Air Force knows that this is a critical inflection point right now. And so we're excited to have Mel come in and talk about what's going on in the Air Force now, where it's heading in the future, and how is ISR going to evolve like it's changed so much over the last 10 years. The next 10 years, just hold on to your seats because it's really going to go through a massive revolution. So looking forward to the discussion, Mel.
Me too.
So when I talked to you first time, you were literally in the parking lot of the Pentagon, and you're just retiring. So how's the retirement gone so far? You had a chance to relax?
It's good. It's weird. It's different. Trying to get used to having a little bit more control over your day and your life that's a great problem to have. More time with the kiddos, more time with the family, especially in the summer as everybody's off to their various activities and sports and stuff. It's been real nice to have some time. And we did take a couple small family vacations and had some time to just relax. And of course, get through the VA process, which is very important. I start early, get through all that and some administrative stuff. But yep, officially retired and enjoying it.
That's awesome. But I know you're probably ready to get back at it. You already have your LLC set up. Was it Keystone Strategic Solutions, playing on the Stone piece?
Thanks, Jake. Yeah, and the Intel piece.
I love it. That's great. And you come from a military family, right? So you don't have to explain to your husband what you're up to.
That's right. He's a retired Air Force Intel colonel also. And we did the joint spouse thing in the Air Force for many, many years. And he retired in the 2019-ish timeframe when I went into command. So it's been a fun ride for both of us. But yeah, we grew up both of us together in Air Force intelligence.
How do you have boundaries around talking shop after work?
It's generally the last thing that both of us wanted to do when we got home, thankfully. So I think we're in pretty good shape. But it was nice to have somebody who you were dealing with something or some crisis of the day not much had to be said to kind of know what each of us was dealing with for our respective careers. So we could sympathize that way, and that was nice to have. And obviously, whenever we could get in a skiff, it made for some good shop talk.
Plenty of empathy around the dinner table, I bet.
For sure, for sure.
Yeah, so, uh, just a fantastic career. Like I said, finishing up in the Pentagon, where you're the Assistant Deputy Chief of Staff for ISR, but, you spent time at Cybercom. I assume that's where you got to work shoulder to shoulder with Ryan, a lot of other great folks. So spent time as a Senate liaison, so very comfortable with, the political side of the Air Force. Commanded the 35th Intelligence Squadron, and, a little tidbit we picked up on, you also commanded the 363rd ISR Wing, in the same isn't that the same unit that your grandfather commanded, some 64 years ago?
Yeah, it's just one of those really cool Air Force coincidences, but ended up being just a great family story. So yeah, my grandpa, longtime airman, started out in the Army Air Corps, and then retired as a brigadier general many years later after his amazing service in World War II, Silver Star, just some heroics from his part, and the stories he would tell were amazing. Served in Vietnam also, and then yeah, he did in between. He did command actually before all that. It was in the 50s post Korea. He did command what was then the 363rd Tactical Reconnaissance Wing when it was at Shaw. And when we were doing some research about the wing that I was going to command, it always sounded familiar in my head. And my grandpa had passed away at that time, and I was stationed at Maxwell, so I went to the Air Force Historical um, Association. That's not the name of it. I'll have to get you the right name of it. But it was the Air Force Research Historical Research Agency there at Maxwell, and they pulled microfilm and everything else, and essentially helped me figure out that my grandfather did in fact command that wing. So I could look back at his records and some of the press and some of the other things, his Inspector General reports, those kind of things that came through, and was able to could weave some of that into my change of command speech to talk about him and the legacy, and just a really neat story, and real honor to be able to command that wing, which is the best intel wing in the Air Force, despite what others might tell you.
You might be biased, but it sounds like it. It sounds like it. And to close the gap, your father was also Air Force, right?
Yeah, my dad was also served in Vietnam, and longtime airman, retired as a colonel. He actually worked for my grandfather, which is how he met my mom, which was a fun story. But yeah, he retired out of Randolph Air Force Base in San Antonio, where both my sister and I got to go to high school, which was terrific on base. And interestingly, it's also the high school that my mom graduated from when my grandpa was stationed there many years ago. So just kind of continuing the loop there and the legacy of an Air
Wow.
Force family. Yeah.
Wow. I tell you, they ought to have a statue for your family. That's a lot of service. That's a lot of time in the supporting the airmen, supporting the military, and I think families like yours are to be admired.
I appreciate that. It was an honor to get to do it and follow in those footsteps for so long.
So it probably isn't too hard to map back why you went to the Air Force Academy. Was it? It wasn't a hard decision to make, right?
It wasn't too tough. I always tell everybody the stories where when I was in the college application phase of my high school, we would get some acceptance letters, and all of those were celebrated amongst the family dinner table when we got home from school or sports. But when I got the acceptance into the Air Force Academy, I came home to kind of a surprise party. So it was a little bit more of a celebration than the other. So not pressure, but a little bit of a hint that this was where I needed to go. And honestly, it was not a tough decision for me growing up in the Air Force. The academy is a great deal. It enabled my family financially to also get my sister through school. Um, but what an opportunity, and I'm glad that that worked out for me. But yeah, it wasn't that hard of a decision. It may have been a little lack of creativity on my part, but not a tough decision.
Right. Well, before we go into your career, which I want to talk about a little bit, you have a great family story. You have two daughters, and I watched the when you were in command, you put out a very heartfelt video talking about some of the challenges with Anna and making you a better person. I think a lot of people in our audience have been, life gives us curveballs, and you make of it what you can, and sometimes you make a tough situation a strength. And maybe share just a little bit about that with our audience.
Sure. Thanks for watching that. I love talking about my daughter. When I did that video, it was kind of a the wing and the Air Force and everybody. If it was early days of COVID, and there was some real concern about resiliency, and it was we were thinking as leaders, projecting how long units could go on like this, where we were still having to do the mission every day. Teleworking at the classified level is not a thing. Having to do the mission every day in tough circumstances, having to worry about families, having to worry about personal health, all those things, and a lot of unknowns. And one of the things we decided to do was really it would help everyone's resilience if we could kind of share what each of us had been through. So I started by doing that video and telling the story of Anna. While I do love talking about her, I've never actually watched that video. I don't think I could get through it. It was tough enough to film, but the telling that story helped inspire just some amazing airmen that we had in the wing tell their stories, and we had just some incredible stories. And I think the feedback we got was that really helped folks understand, see themselves and other people, and see how they've come out on the other side. And I think it helped inspire a few folks. And for my own personal story, yeah, Anna, we had as two kind of type A military folks when we were getting ready to think about the kid decision. My husband's a weapons officer, so there were a lot of whiteboards and diagrams, all the planning you could imagine, all the strategy we had read, all the books, and of course Anna wasn't going to follow the path that we had prepared for, and that at the time it was a crisis for us, and it was very difficult. But over time, you watch this kid who's been told she'll never do a list of things, and just watch her kind of check them off year by year. Was pretty amazing. So this kid gets to write her own story, and it has helped us determine, what truly is important. And it wasn't the planning and the life that we had planned. It was being able to, being able to work with her on what she was going to be able to do, and being able to give her the grace to figure that out herself. And she's been just an amazing kid, been through more challenge than anybody I know on the planet. But the kid is, she's 17 years old now. She's in high school. She's doing terrific. She is finding her ways to communicate. She has a sense of humor. And she keeps us on our toes, and she keeps us laughing every day. So she has really provided that perspective throughout my career and beyond on what is truly important. So we're really blessed to have that young lady in our lives, and really thankful for everything that she's accomplished.
I think something you said in the video from what it taught you as a leader is not always look at what's wrong and like go after like why did you do that or what's wrong, but actually finding out what's the story behind each person for what they're doing or not doing, so you can understand their perspective a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, as young leaders, I know I didn't, I wasn't looking at, if someone's, having a tough day at work, I wasn't necessarily thinking at that stage in my life, at least, of, well, what are they dealing with at home? What's going on outside of work that might be causing this? It was more about just that very basic black and white. They're not performing today. And Anna's, the experience with Anna really helped me as a leader step back and think about, well, what if, what is their situation? What are they dealing with? And to be much more empathetic and much more understanding. That was a real key leadership lesson that Anna taught me.
She and her sister lucky to have great role models from you and your husband, and I love the story. We'll put the clip in if you want, so folks can look at that. It will whet your eye if you watch that video. Okay,
Yeah, it definitely. Thank you.
Mel, talk a little about your career. So you went to the Air Force Academy. Were you a good cadet? Did you do? Were you a squared away cadet?
It's pretty good cadet. I watched Ryan Heritage's video, and so maybe I was inspired. But yeah, I was a pretty good cadet. Did pretty well. Played volleyball a couple of years. Had no business doing that. But was driven towards the competition. Had some great friends on the volleyball team, and played for a couple years till I realized I had real no business playing intercollegiate volleyball. But uh, that was another good leadership test in how do you balance all of that in terms of time management and stress management and prioritization. Um, yeah, pretty good cadet. Came out of the academy and was grateful to get a grad school slot right out of the academy. So got to go to knock out a master's degree at a civilian institution, University of Illinois, in a fantastic engineering psychology program, which is kind of human decision making and cognition in terms of how people interact with things, and just fascinating experience. And then off to Intel school to start to begin my Intel career. So that was the beginning. But yeah, I think I was a decent.
So what are talk about the career of an Air Force officer in intelligence. What are some of the key milestones that you hit during your career?
Yeah, I think I followed a kind of typical path if there is such a thing. Yeah, you get through Intel school, a good fellow down in San Angelo, Texas, and it's a great program. And then I was trying to get to Europe and somehow ended up in Japan. Not exactly on the way, but I had a great assignment, very formative assignment in signals intelligence at one of our field sites in Japan. And several things happened there that were real important to me moving on. One was I met my husband. Um, Two was 9/11. I was actually deployed on 9/11. So very interesting experience. And then three, I just had the most phenomenal senior NCOs that you could imagine, that you would ever want as a young lieutenant to kind of teach you how to be a leader. And in signals intelligence, you start out leading teams that are pretty large for a young company grade officer. So I had an awesome flight, and it was 100 people. And then as I, grew into that position, I kind of left there with joint leadership experience, but really formed by the example those senior NCOs set for me. And that has stuck with me. And I couldn't be more thankful for a job like that at the beginning, kind of a leadership test right at the beginning. And yeah, it was a very formative time. 9/11 happened. I was in Saudi Arabia at the time,
Wow.
deployed to Saudi Arabia, and that kind of changed the course of all of our careers as we began enduring freedom, Iraq to freedom, and everything that followed after that. And that's kind of a normal path. You start out in something tactical. I ended up there, and then spent a little. And then my husband and I did the long distance thing. My Before we were married, I spent a little bit of time in Florida, and he was in Las Vegas at weapon school. And we eventually joined there, where I got to work on intelligence in support of our flying missions. So, threat analysis, adversary aircraft specifically. Another fantastic mission there in Las Vegas. And then trying to remember exactly. I end up in we get to go back to Goodfellow where we get to teach, which was fun. I got to spend a little time in the White House, in the White House Situation Room as a senior captain, young major, which was fantastic opportunity and kind of lucked into it, but another formative opportunity to watch our most senior leaders make decisions in crisis, handle a lot of different information, and then watch the transition of government between two administrations and watch how that happened, and then watch the new administration come in and do the same thing. So
Which White House was that? That was
yeah, that one was between came in President Bush 43, and then the transition into President Obama. So about a year and a half with President Bush, and then then the transition, and I think 6 8 months with President Obama. Um, and wow, what an experience just to watch that. And what's really neat to me is when I retired, my team reached out to both those presidents, former presidents, and they both sent just the kindest letters to me that'll
wow.
always be part of my my things that I'm incredibly proud of. But those two administrations, watching how they operated and watching how they dealt with people, certainly different in terms of the politics, but that's not why we were there. We were there to help them make decisions. And at that most senior level, when you're waking somebody up in the middle of the night, and that happens pretty frequently. There wasn't one situation where um, or I felt like, they were uh, not thankful for the information we provided. They were graceful about to a person, very graceful about you know our doing our job, and very thankful for the information, and no no yelling, no grumpiness. It's something I always remembered when I was getting called in the middle of the night many times in different command positions. You know, and you don't really want to be happy about it, but
Yeah.
uh, but watching that example, and watching uh, how they treated people with respect, how they went through a very thoughtful decision making process, and how they got lots of sources of information. That's something that stuck with me.
As you go later in your career where your scope has grown, but at the end of the day, a lot of what you're working on, that's the end customer, right? You're trying to paint the picture for that desk.
That's right, and it did. It changed the way you look at information. It changed the way you communicate from an executive standpoint. And you think about the consumer and when really what the bottom line is, and that has mattered to me in every job since.
So go a little bit more recently in your career as you've kind of specialized in this ISR area. How has ISR evolved? Or first, for those that don't know, maybe explain what ISR is, so I don't stumble over it, just so they can understand what that is, and talk about how it's evolved maybe over the last 5, 10 years.
Sure. Yeah. And in my career, I've had the real fortunate experience of going back and forth between Intel or ISR and cyber, and we can kind of talk a little bit about both. You know, started out ISR, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance, kind of encompasses all of the things that military intelligence professionals do, from gathering information to analyzing it to then doing something with it. I started out in the gathering or collection side of that, and signals intelligence, and I've got to do a little bit of all parts of ISR. But I've also got to kind of go back and forth into cyber, which is what as cyber was becoming more prevalent in our Department of Defense in terms of a war fighting function. I was able to be kind of at the early stages of that. Signals intelligence and cyber kind of go hand in hand. They're using often the same domain, the same kind of techniques, and so it was natural then for intelligence folks to go back and forth between intelligence and cyber. I get to be at the early stages of that. The squadron that you mentioned, the 35th Intelligence Squadron, which was a squadron that was designed to provide intelligence for our cyber defenders and our cyber operators. And it grew into building out our first cyber mission force contribution from the Air Force to Cyber Command, as Cyber Command was becoming a combatant command. Um, so that meant young analysts, growing analysts of a lot of different varieties from what they were doing into a much more technical uh, cyber analytic role. So we built our first cyber mission teams, cyber combat mission teams, and cyber combat support teams, and cyber protection teams there in that squadron, and grew that big enough to split off into a second squadron. And that has kind of become the Air Force's, beginning of the Air Force's presentation. We've reorganized several times since then, but that was to be at the beginning of that was really um, interesting to me, and it caused me to kind of come back into cyber a couple different times later in my career. So that's been a real benefit to me over the years. I got to command the wing that you mentioned, and in that wing, several different missions. One is um, the threat intelligence piece that happens largely in Las Vegas, Nevada, at Nellis, with our exercises. Providing that threat intelligence to our fighter pilots and our CAP and our MAP pilots. We have that wing has a special operations ISR mission, so just some outstanding heroic airmen flying with our special operation forces, providing them exquisite intelligence. And then the third is our targeting enterprises run out of that wing. And so cyber was playing a role in the targeting enterprise, where we were essentially doing that analysis and targeting to support the cyber operations mission, which was phenomenal. And the targeting mission, of course, has grown and become very important. So I also got to be the deputy commander at 16th Air Force, which is our Air Force's cyber. So um, all of our Air Force cyber and intelligence ISR mission is headquartered at 16th Air Force. So to be the decom there was a fascinating
Very
experience.
cool.
Just operational cyber from all perspectives, plus all of our intelligence mission there. Working for Air Combat Command, just a fantastic opportunity. And then of course I get to finish up um, as the J2, the Director of Intel for Cyber Command, and then wrapped it up at the Pentagon as the deputy or the assistant deputy chief of staff for Air Force ISR, which is now Air Force intelligence at the Pentagon. So working for some great people in Lieutenant General retired Leo Lauerbach and Lieutenant General Max Pearson.
So talk about the role of industry, of the private sector, how you've seen that evolve over the past um, several years from your seat. Like, how important has that contractor been in your planning and your execution?
I think increasingly important in both the cyber and the intel fronts. So on the intel front, the role of technology and what a contractor can provide. So I think one most of innovation is happening in industry in terms of tech that supports intelligence and that supports cyber, and that is terrific. And that translating that into government is where folks like you and GovCon come in. In intelligence specifically, this is a real exciting time where um, it's about there's so much data in this mix, and how is that data presented to someone, a human that can make a decision or determine what to do with it, has kind of been the quandary for many years. Now it's how do I make a humans typically were making decisions on where to place a sensor or where an asset should be looking at any given time based on a commander's priority. Now technology should be driving that. Technology should be able to provide that sensor queuing real time, so the human is not making a decision on that necessarily, but it is making more important cognitive decisions on the data that's coming off of that. That is then hopefully put into some kind of context by some emerging technology, AI or automation tools that can help there. And then the human has got a much more informed set of information, set of data uh, to make recommendations to a command report. So that's intelligence has really evolved that way, um, where the technology becomes important. It also in this overlaps between intelligence and cyber on the cybersecurity piece for sure. Getting towards zero trust matters in our classified networks and matters in all of our networks. But contractors can play a huge role in helping um, anticipate the security needs, stay ahead of it, um, and 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 provide provide a service that is inherently secure, inherently meeting zero trust mandates. I think that's evolved a long way. So um, it in it wasn't long ago, and it still is in some cases where contractors may have been the soft underbelly of our defense industry in terms of cybersecurity. The easiest surface to attack, the data maybe not as protected. I think that's certainly the motivation to change is certainly there, and I think most of the defense contractors are coming along. I know there's been um, some churn in terms of what is that uh, what is the governance structure going to look like? What are the requirements going to look like? And I'm very sympathetic to that entire conversation. But the fact that we're having the conversation tells you that we've come a long way in terms of where we're looking at um, cybersecurity and how we are looking at everything as an attack surface, frankly, that
Yeah.
needs to be defended, both from a data perspective and a network perspective.
And AI is making that exponentially more exposed, right?
It is. I mean, I think AI provides attackers and those with bad intentions. It provides them a way to scale in a way that hasn't, that is exponential, to put it mildly. but it also can give defenders an edge, and that's the thing I'm most excited about, frankly, in the future of of um, of industry's relationship with government is cybersecurity. So, uh, how AI can provide defenders an edge at scale, and you see it in some of these frontier models that are identifying vulnerabilities. And this is to your point about sharing and the relationship with industry. Those those companies now sharing that information with government, but sharing it writ large allows for the rapid patching, allows for the rapid fixing before an adversary can take advantage of that. And I think that that vulnerability discovery at speed um, is something that AI gives the defender. I love it. I've always been sympathetic to our outstanding cyber defenders that that are 24/7 watching screens, trying to identify what is this, why is it happening, where is it coming from, what do I do about it, and that is happening at such a scale that it really puts a burden on them. And there's not enough of them, frankly, to do that at scale. This is why I'm excited about AI in defense, is that it will help really I help the defender identify what's most important and help him or her make a decision about what to do with it without having to do the full without having to get into every single potential attack at a level of detail that they've had to do in the past. I'm hopeful that AI can help speed that process up
Yeah.
all the way from what we would do in a traditional investigation to making a decision about something. I think these AI tools are really going to be able to help defenders.
Any thoughts on the recent pause on CMMC for the contractors?
Um, I'm in a little bit of a wait and see. I think the that CMMC. I'm certainly sympathetic to what it would cost small businesses, but I'm also keenly aware of the threat. Um, and the reason that those controls, those requirements were conceived in the first place. So having spent my life kind of in between intelligence and cyber, that's a threat perspective that might be a little unique. And just to know, I also know what I would do with that kind of if I was looking for a place to get into a network, if I was an adversary, those are some of the first places you look because they're the least defended and they're the easiest to access. So I'm kind of in the middle. I think there's got to be predictability for industry, but there also has to be standard. There has got to be cybersecurity standard that does not put our entire defense industrial base in a vulnerable position because of one weak link or two weak links. So there's compromise here, and I think that's probably what we'll see.
And how do you see it also spilling over to our allies and where we're trying to share information, have a common architecture and interoperability? That seems to be the next challenge, right?
It is a challenge. I know it's very smart folks are already working on this. But having dealt with it a little, I tell you it is getting our allies, and it's not necessarily our main allies. It's maybe the next level of allies and partners that we need to work with. We need to share information that aren't their governments may not be organized in a way where it's easy for their intelligence services to talk to their military departments or their defense departments. That's just structurally how they've organized since for decades and sometimes longer. So breaking or showing how we do it in the U.S. May not be the model that works for them, but regardless, a baseline of requirement or this is what you need to have in order for us to share information with you is reasonable. I think zero trust architectures help get you there to some extent. And then the mission partner environment work that's happening to have a common framework where a lot of these allies and partners can share with some inherent protections. That's the way to do it. So
Yeah.
lots of work needs to happen there, but I'm excited about it.
So what can recently retired Mrs. Millstone, where can you have the biggest impact on industry? What do you bring that's differentiated, and what special skills or experience do you have that can have an impact on industry?
Uh, Thanks. I think there's I think we all have some level of humility, and it's difficult to kind of talk about what why we're special, because I don't look at myself as special. I think there's just some outstanding folks that I got to serve with that are still serving, and some that are retired. And I think the things that we maybe all have is experience leading at scale, experience leading large organizations with incredibly complex and significant resource bases and assets. I think we've made risk decisions that we have to kind of think about in terms of industry and what that would translate to. But we have made more decisions in evaluating um, risk than probably we give ourselves credit for. So I think that's a big one. Uh, and I think just the leadership at large organizations at scale um, involves prioritization. It involves understanding what's important when, and not letting the urgents kind of supersede the important. That's a skill that we probably all have developed, and we may not even realize it because it's kind of secondhand. So, uh, and I think folks that have been in intel and cyber have more experience in that than we realize. But I think the big ones are really that global perspective of the threat, and why what we're doing in cyber is so important. That may be a differentiator for a lot of folks.
Very good. Let's look into the future. Let's fast forward 3 years as we like to do. It's 2029, the summer, the end of the summer 2029. What does ISR look like writ large, and maybe even specifically in the Air Force, and what does industry's role in ISR look like 3 years from now?
Yeah, it's not that far. I think in 3 years, hopefully we'll have a San Antonio Spurs team with the national championship. So we got to keep
Yeah.
that
All right.
keep that in a little, maybe a Texas A&M makes college football playoff again. We'll see. But yeah, I think I'm optimistic about Air Force football too. Don't get me wrong. Just
Okay.
got a longer ways to go. But 3 years, I think we'll see more advances in ISR, specifically um, in systems that are more cost efficient and more attritable. It's not a lot of time, but I think looking at what we've seen in everything with the conflicts in the Middle East, and certainly Russia, Ukraine, the need for systems to collect and gather information that are not kind of the crown jewels are going to be necessary, and I think we'll see those hopefully start to be more thought about, or more or on the developmental front. I think from a data's perspective, uh, sensor queuing is really going to be. I think we'll see advances in sensor queuing. I'm optimistic about that with the work that the professionals in Air Force A2 are working on. How they bring that data to the warfighter will advance, I think, significantly, and excited about that, and hope to keep flight following it. Um, yeah, I think that's where we're headed. And on the cyber front, I think we'll continue to, the AI is advancing at such a quick speed. We'll continue to see advances in cybersecurity and cyber defense from an AI standpoint, giving defenders the edge. We're also going to continue to see um, the need for more controls, as we've seen some of the AI models get outside of their containers a bit more than anticipated. The need for control on that from a government perspective, I think that's going to be an important thing for government resources to look at, is and government contractors to look at, is where are the controls placed, and how are they placed on some of these models? How are they protected? How do we test them in safe environments? That will be something, a new way of thinking. But yeah, I'm optimistic about systems that are attritable, sensor queuing, and all the advances that we'll see in cybersecurity with AI.
And what do you see the role of industry in this battle 3 years from now? Do you see more outsourcing, more reliance on industry, or do you see government bringing it back?
I don't think we'll see. Opinion, just clearly opinion here, but I don't think we'll see government bringing it back Industry has the speed, it has the talent. Um, we are unfortunately hemorrhaging a bit of talent from government right now. I think we'll regret that in the future. But if that talent is landing in industry, our nation will be better for it. So I think watching um, just some incredible advancements on all the fronts that I mentioned. Those are happening in industry. And so, how do we get that to government into the hands of folks in the department that can use it for the good guys? That's the biggest challenge that I think we're going to face. And I think we're watching that evolve. You're seeing a little bit of the tension in terms of government's use of AI, government controls in terms of CMMC, and that's kind of I think healthy tension over time that will resolve. It has to resolve.
Yeah. Well put. Well put. What's one word you would use to describe kind of your gut feeling about the future in this ISR space?
Yeah, I think my gut would say dynamic. And another one you could go with would be opportunity because those things go hand in hand. Um,
We
and
can
it,
even
and
hyphenate
Intel,
those.
yeah, you could in ISR and Intel and in cyber. I think everyone is used to the speed of development um, being on a real high glide slope. I think that is what we're used to, and that will continue even faster than we've seen in the past. Keeping up with it, that's what government has to do. Keeping up with it, staying ahead of it, being humble enough and open enough to work with industry and work with partners. 'Cause that's I think a continued challenge for all of our government officials.
I'm going to put you on the spot like I did with
Yeah.
Ryan. Do you see there being a separate cyber service in 3 years?
It's a topic that several of us debate a bit. I'm excited that it's getting attention, because that means that cyber and the outstanding humans that work in that mission space are getting some attention and hopefully some more resourcing and some light shine on the challenges that they're
Yep.
dealing with. But my personal thoughts on Cyberforce, um, I think I saw a cost estimate the other day of what that might cost, and I think it was in the double digit billions. And my personal opinion is all the things we just talked about in terms of technology. I'd rather see that funding put in things like that. Um, Cyber Command is um, in such high demand, and they have not really fully been able to leverage all of the authorities uh, that they're allowed in law because those haven't been turned into policy. I'd really like my kind of bar would be once those things happen from a personnel talent management standpoint and an acquisition standpoint. Once those things happen and they're fully empowered, if still there's a need for a cyber force, I think that's the time to have or a desire to have more. That's the time to have the cyber force discussion. But to me, you've got to fully empower the organization charged in the DoD to do this mission with the policy and the authorities that they need to have, and then we can have the cyber force conversation. But for today, I think I'm on the skeptic side of things. I think there's greater places that investment um, could be used with much more effect today than the overhead required to put together a cyber force. But I'm going to stay open minded on it moving forward because there's so many smart folks that I have an immense amount of respect for, like Ryan and all the folks that were on the commission. Um, so I'm that's where I am today, but we'll see if that evolves over time.
Awesome. I think the common theme, directly and indirectly, it does come back to talent. It comes back to people, and it's an exciting time in this area where you're a true expert. And so we definitely want to stay in touch with you, Mel.
Appreciate everything you're doing in PTS and for folks like me and my friends and all of the veterans that are coming out of service and looking for places where they can continue to have an impact. Thanks for what you do.
Happy to help. It's good to serve. Good to continue to serve. Well, to our audience, hopefully you enjoyed this discussion. Especially, it warmed up there at the end, talking about where things are heading in the future, and no doubt in my mind that Mel's going to be part of that future in some form or fashion. So we'll be keeping an eye on you, Mel.
Thanks, Jake. I appreciate that.
And to everybody out in our audience, I say it every week because I believe it, that the future of GovCon is happening today. So stay tuned as we continue to look forward and look at what's going on today. Thanks for showing up. All right, so thanks for joining me on another episode of the Future of GovCon. I hope you enjoyed today's conversation and some of the bold predictions. If you did, take a second, share it on your social media, subscribe on YouTube. If you have any ideas for future guests or topics you'd like to have covered, hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm always there. And you can always learn more about precision talent solutions at pts.careers. Look forward to seeing you next week on our next episode.